it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today, I am bringing you my pre-2019 book unhaul. I like to clear out my shelves just before the new year, give myself a little bit of a fresh start on some of the books that I just don't want on my shelves anymore. I have 2 bookshelves in my living room. I'm not really in a position to buy more bookshelves because I live in an apartment. So I have my books like double and sometimes triple stacked. I've got them on top of each other. I need to make room for some different books on my shelves, so I'm just unhauling some books with no regrets. And there's gonna be some books in here that are gonna shock you, and it's not to hurt your feelings, it's just how it is. These really aren't in any particular order, so let me just get some of the more unknown ones out of the way first. This is Mystic, written by Jason Denzel. I honestly don't know anything about this. It was a book outlet haul thing that I added onto my cart to get to $35 for the free shipping. So I just have no real interest in this, and if I'm trying to make room on my shelves, this one was one of them that I was like, yep, that one can go. This is Blue Light Yokohama, written by Nicholas, what's his last name? Obergon. This is a mystery novel about a detective who is stationed in Tokyo. And I thought for a while I was gonna get more into some mystery novels, and I just ended up not really, I just didn't go down that path. I tried to start it a couple different times and it just never really happened. So yeah, this was also a book outlet find that I can do without. 2 more books that were book outlet finds. This is Something Red and this is The Wicked, written by Douglas Nicholas. These were also books that I just added onto my cart because I wanted the free shipping, and I need to stop doing that. It did interest me when I first got it. It's like a blend of fantasy and horror in 13th century England, dark forces, all those kinds of things, mysterious powers swirl the land. I mean, these are all things that sound good in theory, but I also just have like a ton of books on my shelves that also would fit this bill. So if I decide I want to give these a try later, I can, I don't know, find them again at a used bookstore maybe? I don't know. This is The Scottish Prisoner, written by Adeyemi Gabaldon. And I actually just posted my 12 Days of Bookmas book tag video and included The Scottish Prisoner in that video, but that was a hardcover. It was a crazy find. I was at the used bookstore and I ended up upon the Adeyemi Gabaldon section, and sitting there in front of me was The Scottish Prisoner in hardcover, and I was like, I didn't even know they printed it in hardcover. I thought it was just a paperback edition. All of the Lord John Grey novels I thought were in paperback, and that one just happens to be my favorite one out of all the Lord John Grey novels, so what do you know? I decided to upgrade to the hardcover edition, so that's why I'm getting rid of this one. Okay, this just makes me really upset and annoyed. This is The Three Musketeers, written by Alexandre Dumas. This is one of the Word Cloud Classics editions. These are some of my favorite editions of classics to collect. This is one of my favorite stories. So here's the front cover. Let's go ahead and flip this open. Looks normal, looks great. Okay, we're still flipping. Do you see that? Do you see the problem now? Are you seeing it? The binding in this book, the book was bound to this like flexi bound soft leather cover upside down. And I am so furious about it. I don't want this on my shelf. My husband was like, well, it looks great. I was like, no, I shouldn't have to pay, you know, the price for this brand new to get it upside down. It's gotta go. Okay, now we're getting into some books that you're familiar with. So I'm actually going to unhaul all of my Hunger Games trilogy, including the hardcovers of The Hunger Games. We have Catching Fire, then we have Mockingjay, all written by Suzanne Colins. These are all the hardcover editions. This just ended up being a situation where it was time for me to make some choices about what I wanted to keep on my bookshelf. I thought for the longest time, I've had these books since they came out, but I have never reread them. Maybe once before the first movie came out, I reread them, and I haven't touched them since. And I feel like maybe this is blasphemous to say, but if I'm ever in the mood for this story, I'm probably just gonna watch the movie instead of read these books. And I don't have that big of an emotional connection to them that I'm like, this is like a childhood favorite or this is a longtime favorite of mine that I really want to keep around. If I regret it, I can just rebuy them. And again, if I want to come back to the story, I'm probably probably just gonna watch the movie instead of reread it. This book I never posted on my channel. This is Wildwood, written by Colin Malloy, and illustrations by Carson Ellis. You know, if there was ever a book that I wanted to keep around just to do a tag video, this would have been the book for it. Colin Malloy is a musical artist, and there's the do I have that book tag, or do I have that book challenge, and one of the questions is like, do you have a book written by someone who's famous for something else? He's from Portland, and the illustrations are super cute. There's like full-blown illustrations in here. This is a middle grade novel, and I was gonna read this for the NEWT's readathon, which was to read a book with illustrations in it, but I ended up DNFing this book because it was so boring. And I didn't even talk about it, I don't think, in like any videos of mine. I didn't really post this on Instagram, so you would have never known that I attempted this book unless you looked at my Goodreads count. But this was just so boring, I couldn't even bring myself to continue with it. So it's just gotta go. This book, I made this book in a recommendations video because I do believe that there are people out there that will love this series. This is The Falconer, written by Elizabeth May. This is a trilogy of books. It's about a young woman who is a fae hunter, and it was sold to me like 18th century Scottish Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but with fae, and that's what I was looking for, and maybe it was a little bit oversold because I didn't feel that same way about it. I just ended up skimming through a lot of it because I was pretty bored with the action. It was mostly the action that I was just like, ugh. I recently reviewed this book, or no, I didn't review this book. I recently talked about this book in my October wrap-up. This was a book that I read. It's called The Wicked Deep, written by Shay Earnshaw. I read it because it was like a nice atmospheric witchy read. This ended up being a 3-star read for me. It's about these triplet sisters who were accused of witchcraft and were drowned for it, and then every year for the next 200 years they end up coming back every summer and haunting the town. It was really great, really atmospheric. It was a little bit predictable in terms of the plot, but it was still fun. I just don't anticipate coming back to this book, so if I want to talk about it in a video of mine, then I can just go ahead and throw it up like a screenshot or a photo of it. So I'm just making room on my shelf for this. This book I'm getting rid of because I DNF'd. This is Certain Dark Things, written by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I really thought I was gonna love this book. I ended up putting this book in my 5-star TBR predictions, which, what was I thinking? This was sold to me as Mexico City, vampire gangs, and I just didn't see where this was going. Maybe if I had given it a little bit longer, I would have felt a little bit differently. But I'm not gonna come back to this book if I DNF'd it, and I just have no intentions of returning. The Mexican vampires were a vastly different species, and it was really cool, and I just wish I had gotten a little bit more of that. But there were also too many character perspectives for how short of a book this is, so I wasn't connecting with anyone, and that's also why I DNF'd it, because I was like, I don't actually care. Ooh, okay, so this might be one that hurts some people that I am unhauling. This is Children of Blood and Bone, written by Tomi Adeyemi. It kind of hurts me to unhaul this because this ended up being one of the most anticipated books of 2018 for me, and I knew this was gonna happen. I was like afraid that I was getting into it because of the hype. I haven't actually read this book, and I've seen a lot of people have like mixed reviews. There's like some people that really love it, and then more and more people read it and they're like, well, it's actually not that great. My interest in reading this book ended up like dwindling as time wore on, where I was like, I actually don't care if I read that book or not this year. If I regret it, then I'll just like find another way to read it, because there's other ways I could listen to an audiobook. You know, I've got an Audible subscription, so there are other ways that I could consume this book without this having to take room on my shelf. Oh, this stack of books. This was like the stack of books that I had to think about the most before deciding, yes, you're gonna unhaul it. I don't think I will ever reread this series. So this is the Illuminae Files series. I recently talked about this book series in a tag of mine. It might have been the Grinch book tag. It was a series of books that went downhill. The only one that I would have kept would have been Illuminae, but again, I'm not gonna reread it because I feel like the novelty and the surprise has worn off. I don't think this book could be a good reread. The mixed media format, so much of it is visual. This one is still gonna be one of my favorite books from sci-fi, still one of my favorite books of 2017. But I just also don't want to keep this single book out of the whole trilogy. And if I regret it, I can rebuy it. It's okay. Okay, another set of books that I think is gonna upset some people. So this is Nevernight, written by Kristoff, and this is Godsgrave, also written by Kristoff. I swear I'm not purposefully like unhauling all the Kristoff off my shelves, but that just seems to be what ended up happening. This is gonna sound, I don't know if it's particular or whatever, but they're my books and I have every right to feel the way I feel about them and feel the way I feel about authors, and so that's my disclaimer. I'm just like not in the mood to read Asian inspired fantasy that's not written by an Asian author. I was burned by another book this year. I thought it was going to be so great, and I learned my lesson the hard way that just because there's representation on the page doesn't mean it's good representation. Now I know that this is a fantasy setting. It's a Japanese silk punk, steampunk, assassin story, but if I wanted to read about assassins, I've got plenty of other assassin reads. If I wanted to read Asian-inspired fantasy, I've got a couple on my list for next year. If I wanted to read Asian silk punk, steampunk, airships, I've got the Grace of Kings series written by Ken Liu. And there's also like a hint of maybe some Maori cultural appropriation. Well, I'm a majority Hawaiian, and so like Polynesian, Asian-inspired things, I don't fuck around with that. And if you're gonna write something that's gonna be like the tiniest bit offensive, I'm just like, I don't care about it. And then the final book that I'm unhauling, I think you had to see this one coming after me talking about that last book, but this is The Tiger's Daughter, written by Arsenault Rivera. I did DNF this book, around 30% of it. In my November wrap-up, I talked about my reasons why, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was Asian representation, but it was not good Asian representation, and it just made me very uncomfortable. Just a little bit of cultural insensitivity, and you keep spoon-feeding little bits of cultural insensitivity down my throat, I'm gonna DNF it, and I'm gonna get rid of this, and I don't want it on my shelves because I'm not going to continue with this book. All right, so I feel like that's a really good stack of books to just get off of my shelves pre-2019, make some room for some new ones. Put some comments in the comment section below. Were you shocked about any of the books? Were you heartbroken? I didn't mean to break your heart. That's just how unhauling goes sometimes. Or were there other books in this pile that you also felt the same way about? You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at WhatCastRead. It's the same as this channel, so it should be super easy to find. And then I'm also on Goodreads, so if you want to see some of my thoughts before I unhaul the book, that link was always going to be listed down below. Otherwise, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later.